It's a fail. Something's wrong. These things, if you watch any of my other videos, when it was just the woofers running, I mean, these things are bassy. And they don't sound bassy at all right now. But the mid-range sounds really loud, which that's kind of strange to me. Yeah, I've got to open these up and take a better look at them. Okay, moment of truth, confession time. Yeah, I made a major blunder. What I had done when I rewired my crossovers was that I was in so much of a hurry that I didn't pay attention to the little markings on the crossover. And basically, you've got a W and an M that look identical in terms of the character. The only thing distinguishable really is the T for tweeter. And yeah, so what I had done is just had the tweeter leads hooked up. I had what I thought was the mid-range leads hooked up where they belong, and the woofer leads hooked up where I thought they belonged. As it turns out, the woofer and the mid-range leads are backwards. So the way they're on the crossover board is basically tweeter, woofer, mid-range. Why? I don't know. Maybe that's just how the printed circuit board was made. Yeah, so essentially what I had to do was, pull a crossover out of the box, confirm that that was the issue, because when I first turned these on, it sounded like garbage. It was so tinny and so, yeah, not my finest moment, that's for sure. That being said, I'm going to try to concentrate a little bit harder on finishing up this speaker to where it's going to be a thumbs up at the end. Hey, I like the way this sounds. That's the plan anyway. I've already done one crossover on a speaker you can't see on the floor probably, and then I need to address this one. Now the other, thing that occurred during this is that ruining those Goldwood mid-ranges the way I did. Well, in light of this new situation, this new development, that this Goldwood mid-range, the one that I didn't puncture, isn't working, I'm gonna have to go a different direction. I'm gonna have to stick the Dayton Reference Midranges in there. And yeah, hopefully those work. I really had no choice but to go with this Reference Series Dayton Midrange, which, I dig the looks of it, and it's supposed to have a pretty nice frequency response and stuff. It might be kind of an optimal setup between this designer woofer and the Peerless Tweeter, both of which are, really nice sounding speakers. So it might be a really good complement to that. What I don't like about it is this big giant steel dome or aluminum dome on top of it, which sticks out so far that it, makes a bump in the grill cover. I know that when I put this grill cover on, and maybe you'll see this, but basically it creates a hump right there. It's not huge. It'll probably stretch out. It's not ultra noticeable, but it bugs me. I had consulted Parts Express asking them whether or not I could take this corny looking cage off of here, and they said, well, mechanically it's probably possible, but it would void the warranty. I'm leaving it on there for now. At least that way I'll get a feeling for the way it sounds. And I know the cover's on there to protect it, I get it, but why they had to make it so enormous, I have no idea. Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, and I'm gonna keep rocking and rolling. I've got to mount that crossover, kind of show you how I fixed it. I've got to pull this crossover out and fix that one, put them back together, and knock on some wood. Hopefully it'll fix the problem. All right, well, here's the ugly truth. Let's start with the easy one first. So I can show you where I goofed up on my wiring. So this is where the wires connect. And this was my oversight that I mentioned. And these that I thought were mid-range because they're sitting next to the tweeter, these are actually, those belong here. These belong over here. So that was my bad. So when I repair this, basically what I did on the other one, so I just heated these up, pulled these guys out, you know, stripped them back, retinned them. Same with this one, pulled it out. I've actually got a longer one of these set up, so I just, you know, put this one aside and used a new one. And again, just soldered the end of the wire, you know, so I could get it through the hole in the PCB board so I could do a proper solder on the back. So that's what I've got to do on this, and that'll fix this crossover. It fixed it on the other speaker. So that's the good news. The bad news is that my little cute little Peerless Tweeter, this came undone when I was trying to wiggle off the terminal. It actually pulled this straight out of here. And to be honest with you, I don't even know technically what makes the connection. I'm assuming, it's really hard to see, but I'm assuming they may have had like a dab of solder up on top here. Because when I look at the other side, it looks like there's actually like a little dab of solder up on the top here. So this one here, all I did was, you know, slide it back in because it had pulled straight out. I slid it back in. What I'm going to attempt to do is put some solder on top of here and see if it will make a connection and test it. If that doesn't work, that means this tweeter is basically junk. Well, should we see if it works? Okay, here we go. I think that this tweeter is officially junk now. This speaker here, of any of them I'm working on, I mean, this is the one I'm most serious about, so of course that's the one I have the most problems with. That's Murphy's Law for sure. You know, the cheap fun ones, yeah, they just whiz bang them together and they work great, right? This one, just been a lot of problems from trying to fit that goofy Dayton Classic woofer in the beginning, which is too big for a normal 12-inch hole, to then, you know, finding out that the cabinet's just too small for it, so I wound up going with a designer series, and now the hole's too big, and this thing's only got 5 screws. It's annoying. The Goldwood mid-ranges sounded like kind of like crap to begin with, but I wanted to try to make them work, and then I wound up blowing them because of my own mistake. It's yeah, this project is pretty frustrating. Oh, the boom mat spray. Oh my God. Yeah, this project I'm going to be really glad when it's over. This is one set of speakers. You know, when I'm done with them, they'll probably sound really nice, but the work that's going into them, oh boy, yeah. All right, well, I might as well try to fix the crossover. Maybe this is something that I can accomplish. Stuff off of here. All right. This mid-range got to come out of here. Basically, you heat it up from the backside. That should pull right out of there. So. just to show you kind of what you're dealing with on these. Not sure if you can see that copper in there. I believe it's copper. Anyway, that's the kind of the internal part of this PCB board. That's the part that touches the foil. So that's the part that you're actually soldering onto. And remember, I said I had to move the mid-range. As far as getting wire for this crossover, I'm just going to get enough to go through the holes. And get them nice and tight because this is 14 gauge wire, so it's pretty thick. Just barely makes it through the hole. Then I'm going to put some solder on there. Does two things. Makes it much easier to get through the hole, and it gets a lot of solder prepared for that. So I want to get this wire nice and hot. It's like the wire is hot. It'll get hot almost all the way down through the jacket. Now once that solder starts flowing, then it's a different story. Then it tends to go just fine. See how shiny that insulation's getting? That's how hot that wire is in there. Okay, all good on that one. And then these ones are probably cooled off to where I can touch them again. Start from scratch on these guys. Okay. This wire is actually made by Honeywell. It is tough. I can go ahead and put a little bit of solder on those. These ones go much quicker because they're thinner. The thicker the wire, the harder it is. Now these wires, they're much thinner than the hole is. I noticed that with the tweeter wires. I really had to fill up that hole with solder. And on these ones, what I did on the last set was I actually folded this in half and it still fit through the hole. I'm not sure if I can manage that on this one or not, but I'll try. Get those cool off first though and get to getting on this one. All right, so we've got our solder on the end and we've got our solder on the back side that's still there from before. So this is kind of a three-hand process here. But essentially what we want to do is get it ready to go through the hole, put some pressure on it, which is pretty hard because these are kind of soft wires, especially when they get heated up. And they do get hot when you're touching them, so that's another downside. And we're going to keep some pressure on that, heat it, and pop right through. All right, so now we've got a through hole there. And this one here. Same thing. All right. Now our job is just beginning. Well, it's not really just beginning. It's on the downhill slope right now. I'm going to try to get fancy, like I said, and try to get double the wire into that hole. I don't know how well it'll work, but it's worth a shot. And I normally wouldn't do it, except I'm just trying to get it through. I'm trying to get it to fill up that hole as good as I can. Big hole in that board. And you might ask, well, why don't you use thicker wire? And that is because the terminal ends for the speakers don't fit real well on the thick wire, especially that smaller one. Skinny job. All right, are we going to be successful with this one? Let's see. Well, we're making pretty good progress so far. And yep, we managed to get through. All right. All right, now with those in there, basically the next step is just to hook them on there so that they're going to stay in place while they get soldered. So these guys here, hook them at about a 95 or a 90-degree angle. Hold these guys too until they make contact. Yeah, I really don't like the printed circuit boards. I think they might be really good for some things, but I'm not a big fan of them for crossovers. All right, now this is actually the harder part, because this part you need to keep kind of downwards pressure on it without yanking it out. So what I've been doing is just using some opposing weight here. Try to keep some downward pressure on it. Make sure it's in there nice and good. As flush as I can make it. Now the idea here is we want something that looks like kind of like a Hershey Kiss. Put this guy up right here. And pretty ugly, but I think it'll work. I don't know about you guys, but if this ain't good, clean entertainment, I don't know what is. I'm taking a crack at this one. I'm sure there's probably guys out there that know how to solder really good. I'm not one of them. Before you put your soldering iron away, if you clean it real good and then put a little bit of solder on there, keep it nice. All right, turn that off, and viola. We've now got our woofer hooked up to the correct place, and the mid-range hooked up to the correct place. So, will miracles never cease to exist? So that's good. At least I could put this thing in there, and that much of it is done. Then all I have to worry about is that tweeter. Well, as much as I hate to do it, I might have to utilize a different tweeter. I did pick up a couple of cheap tweeters from eBay. These are actually, they're not cheap tweeters, they're Peerless. They're 8 ohm, and they're 1 inch. So it might be better for the size of the speaker actually. Need to open up this hole some. That is what is next. Gotta put this tweeter in here. Now I also have a couple of other tweeter choices as well. I've got a Dayton 1/8 inch silk dome tweeter, and I've got a VIFA 3/4 inch tweeter. This tweeter I had tried in my Jensen CS315s. Wasn't super thrilled with the way that it sounded. Seemed a little bit harsh to me, but yeah, this is a possibility too. The biggest problem with this tweeter is how it will look in relation to the mid-range, because we don't have a lot of room here. Let me put the mid-range there so you can see it. So with this mid-range in here, like something like this, we are coming dangerously close to this edge. As a matter of fact, we would be almost touching, which to me, you know, is it better that they're closer? It doesn't make a difference really, because this, you know, baffle is so big on here. The faceplate is so big, it's not getting the tweeter any closer to the mid-range. The VIFA tweeter, this VIFA tweeter would probably look pretty nice there too. It's pretty symmetrical, and it does have clearance here, but there's a couple things going against it. One is that it is a 6 ohm tweeter, which means it's going to throw off my crossover even more than it already will. Just by virtue that it's a out-of-the-box crossover. It's just designed for an 8 ohm load, and so the further away you get from that, you know, 8 ohm impedance, the crossover points change. And so this one here, though, I think is probably the most logical one to go with, because like I say, it is it's a decent tweeter. It's an 8 ohm tweeter. It's a 1 inch tweeter, which means, you know, I'm comparing these kind of to the Energy 4.1Es, which also have a 1 inch tweeter. And this could help out in terms of the way it sounds with the bigger drivers, with the 12 inch woofer, and this big 2 inch dome mid-range. That might fill out the sound a little bit better than the 3/4 inch would. far as power rating, this thing is, I think it's rated pretty high, like, I don't know, 100 watts or something. So it's a pretty decent tweeter. And actually, the way it would look on here is really good, because the distance between here and here is going to be almost the same. Very symmetrical, which I like the aesthetics of a speaker as well as the function of it. So I think that that's the plan. This is going to be a fairly involved hack job. I call it a hack job. It'll look nice when I'm done. But basically what I have to do is stick this here, center it on that hole, which is nice too, because this magnet kind of fits right inside the existing hole. So I have no problem finding the center for it. But basically I'm going to take a marker, go around the outside so that I know what my opening's got to be, and just open up that hole. And I think if you've watched any of my other videos, the way I typically do it, because I don't have a router and I don't even have my old roto zip anymore. I don't know what happened to that. But anyway, what I do is basically draw a circle, center punch all the way around it, drill a bunch of holes, kind of like relief holes, like perforating it, and then take that saw, that all-purpose Amazon Japanese steel saw that I use, which is pretty worn out, time for a new one I think, but it still cuts and still works. But then I just use that to kind of knock out those reliefs, and what I wind up with is an opening that I can then file out and drop the speaker into. Seeing as how I've already got the insulation in this though, I'm gonna get sawdust everywhere. So, and I don't want my saw blade getting caught up on the insulation and ripping it up either. So basically I'm gonna be gutting 2 cabinets, taking the insulation out, the drivers out, everything, and then opening up that hole and taking another crack at this. I've come this far with it. It's almost done. I mean, I'm on the finish line.